Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are at the end of May. This is the last day of May. May, as some of you might know, is Biodiversity Month. So May 22nd is the International Day for Biodiversity. We always do a ton of live events around biodiversity. It's one of our favorite themes, the weird and the wonderful, and the amazing life we have all over our planet. But just because May is coming to an end doesn't mean we don't have a lot more coming up. We are next week having our World Ocean Week events. So if you haven't checked them out yet, exploringbytheseat.com /Ocean Week. We have a ton of live events with ocean explorers and scientists and researchers from all over the world. So check those out. Hopefully we'll see you with some ocean action next week. But before we dive into that, we are going to talk about the Peruvian Amazon today. So I'm going to be today's guest speaker. If you don't know me, I am the founder and director of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. I am an explorer with the National Geographic Society. And every once in a while, I sneak away and get to go visit somewhere pretty cool. And at the end of March, I was in Peru, specifically to visit the Amazon rainforest in Peru. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to bring up a map to get us started. And then we're going to go from there. So just give me 1 second to share my whole screen. There we go. PowerPoint should be up now. And let's tuck that away. There we go. So this should be nice and full screen. If for some reason it's not, if one of the camera classrooms just wants to unmute and let me know, but it looks good on this end. If you're tuning in via YouTube or can use the live chat, you can let us know where you're joining from. Send us in some questions as well, where we'll work those in while we visit our camera classrooms. So let's get a feel for where we are in the world. So I'm here in Canada, just outside of Toronto, and this is where I spent my time in Peru, down here in South America. So if we go a little bit closer, you can see South America, and then Peru is on the western side, and it runs all along the coast of the Pacific Ocean. Peru is an amazing country. There's so many different ecosystems, from rainforest to cloud forest to mountain ranges and desert, and really everything in between. So I spent my time in this area down here around the border of Bolivia and Brazil, where they border Peru. And then the Amazon rainforest stretches really all across this massive section of South America. So Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, these are all kind of parts of that stretch of the rainforest. And I spent my time in Manu National Park, which is a really well-protected area. It's never been logged before. It's all old growth forest, and it's one of the most biodiverse places on the planet, with a lot of plants and animals that you can find there. So let's get into it. Let's see where my adventures took me. So before I went into the rainforest, I was in Lima. That's the capital city of Peru. There's about 11 million people, so it's a pretty busy place. And then I went to Cusco, which is about an hour and a half flight. Cusco is 4,000 meters in elevation up in the mountains in the Andes. And pretty close to Cusco is Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is an incredibly famous Inca site. So hundreds of years ago, Machu Picchu was a really special kind of ceremonial area for the Inca people. And all throughout Peru, you can find villages and ceremonial areas and such. It's all ruins today, but in the past, it was a thriving society. So this is not Machu Picchu. This is just a little bit of ruins at the beginning of the trek to Machu Picchu. So from Cusco, I was picked up at 4 a.m. There was a 2-hour van ride, and then it would have been about a 2-hour train ride, but I jumped off the train early. So you can see the train goes along this valley, along the river. You can see the train tracks there. And I jumped off at kilometer marker 104, and I hiked for 22 kilometers, pretty much right up into the mountains. It was a very long hike. It was exhausting. I think I had 25,000 steps on my watch. But it was worth it to be able to walk through these views. So here I am. This is my guide, Elio. We spent the day together hiking, and you can see that we're going higher and higher into the mountains. You can see there's no guardrails. It just drops off into the valley, down to the river. And we're climbing higher and higher as we make our way closer to Machu Picchu. Here's some more of the trail. There's a set of ruins here on the side of the hill. This is not Machu Picchu. This is called Winiwea, and it is an agricultural sector close to Machu Picchu. And so you'll get a better idea in this next picture what it looked like. So these are all terraces. They carve these into the side of the hill, and so they can grow crops. Because if you look here, it would be really hard to grow crops in the forest. So they carve these sections out of the hill, build these terraces, and then they can grow these crops. And then, of course, there's places for people to live here in the past. And eventually we made our way to the Sun Gate. So the Sun Gate overlooks Machu Picchu. It's still about another 30, 45 minutes. You have to hike downwards to get to Machu Picchu itself here on top of this hill. Machu Picchu was one of the few sites that weren't discovered by the Spanish. So the Spanish came to South America, to Peru. They kind of plundered a lot of these cities, destroyed a lot of them, took a lot of the artifacts and the gold, but they never found Machu Picchu. And I think you can see why. Look how hidden it is, buried amongst these hills, these mountains, in the valleys. So there's me and Elio. We just had some lunch overlooking Machu Picchu. And you can see how hard it would have been to find and how easy it would have been to just completely miss it amongst all these hills and valleys, and how hard it would have been hundreds of years ago to find. So we hiked down to Machu Picchu. You can see the security guards here on the way in, these llamas that came to greet us. And then there we go. We made it down to Machu Picchu, and we spent a little time exploring some of these ruins. So I did it quickly, 22 kilometers in one day, but it was totally worth it to get to see this absolutely amazing archaeological site and a real testament to what the Inca were able to build and do hundreds of years ago. So the next day, I was up again at 4 a.m. and was picked up by my guide, Satu. So Satu is an amazing guy. He is an incredible naturalist, knows a lot about wildlife, and he's a birder. So he's one of the top birders in all of Peru. He knows a lot about birds and how to spot them. And so he was my pal for a week. We spent a week in the rainforest together looking for wild animals. So on our first day, we drove up into the cloud forest. We spent the whole day driving up, higher and higher into the mountains, into the cloud forest. And the cloud forest gets its name because a lot of the times it is covered in clouds. It's pretty rainy. It's a little bit colder. The plants and the trees give off a lot of water through evaporation. So a lot of rain clouds form, especially in the morning. And so that's why it gets that cloud forest name. And as we went along, we would stop, we would hike a little bit, look for birds, take pictures, things like that. So what did we see in the cloud forest? We saw these beautiful blue-banded toucanettes, which are like toucans, but they're smaller. We saw proper toucans like this mountain toucan with its beautiful colors. So the bill of a toucan, it looks pretty big. So you think that might be pretty heavy, but it's actually very light. It's mostly empty, but it has blood vessels that go all through its bill. And that's how it can keep cool. So if the toucan's getting too hot, the blood goes through the bill and loses some of the heat to the environment. So that helps to cool the toucan down, this mountain toucan. This bird here is the national bird of Peru. It's the cock of the rock. And so we found a group of males who were gathered together. They call a group of males a lek. And what they do is they sing and they dance to try and get the female's attention. So cock of the rock, this is the national bird of Peru. Like all rainforests, there are a lot of hummingbird species. So we did see a lot of hummingbird species. We'd stop in different spots, and a lot of times there'd be little gardens or spots where people had feeders set up, and you could see a lot of different hummingbirds in those spots. This is a Gould's jewel front. This is a swordbill hummingbird. You can see how big its beak is. It's got the biggest beak compared to its body of any bird in the world. So its beak is about as big as its body. You can see it has to sit and kind of lean its head back a little because the beak is so big. There's tiny hummingbirds like this rufous crowned, or this rufous coquette. So if you hold your thumb up, this hummingbird wouldn't be much bigger than your thumb, and they sure don't hold still very long. So if they do land for a moment, you got to take your pictures pretty fast. And then this was one of the most beautiful ones. This is a rufous booted racket tail. So it's got this little kind of rusty colored feathers that make little boots over its feet. So that's where it gets its rufous booted name. And then racket tail, these two feathers here, these special feathers, they call them rackets. So a rufous booted racket tail. It's colder in the cloud forest. So there are species like this woolly monkey, and they have to be adapted to that cooler weather. So you can see they have this big, puffy, furry coat, and that helps them stay cool in the cloud forest. And we caught this group just before the sun went down. They were crawling around in the canopy of the rainforest. They were eating some leaves, and we got to catch a few pictures before it got too dark to take any more. So the next day was another early start. We drove for a while, but eventually the roads ended. There were no more roads. So now our road, our highway, became this river. This is the Madre de Dios River. The Madre de Dios River translates from Spanish to English to the Mother of God. And it runs all the way through Manu National Park. It goes into Bolivia, and eventually it connects to the Amazon River. So this is one of the tributary rivers of the Amazon. It collects all the water from the cloud forest. So all that water from the mountains runs down into this river, and then it's carried to the Amazon and eventually to the Atlantic Ocean. So this is a video I took before we got on the river with a drone. It's sped up a little bit so that we can see it a little bit quicker. So you'll notice it turns really fast. That's because I sped the video up a bit, but I wanted you to see what the river looked like. So this was our highway that we used to move through the rainforest for the week. There were no other people. We didn't see any other people that week. There was no hot water, no electricity, no internet. It was absolutely amazing to get away from everything, get right out into nature and see plants and mammals and birds and reptiles, amphibians, insects, and all kinds of amazing biodiversity. And these little canoes have little motors on them. And this was what we used. One of these canoes is what we used to travel along the river. And I used my GoPro here to show you what it's like. So this is a little clip. It's called a time lapse. Every 10 seconds for the whole afternoon, my GoPro took a picture and it makes this cool looking little video. So you can see that there's no people, no buildings. It's just river and rainforest as the canoe makes its way down the river. The water was really high because there was a lot of rain recently, so it was moving very fast, and it was really, really high in the river. So the river was very full of water heading down towards the Amazon. One of the first wildlife we saw was this peccary. So a peccary is a pig that lives in the rainforest, and for whatever reason, it wanted to swim across the river. Maybe there was some better food on the other side, but it was pretty risky. The river was moving really fast. The peccary was working really hard to try and get across the river, but eventually it was successful and it got to the shallows and it was able to get out of the river to the other side. The skies along the river were full of birds, parrots and parakeets and macaws like these. These are blue and yellow macaws, and you hear them way before you see them. They are very loud birds. They're not shy. So it's definitely not quiet when you make your way down the river. The birds, like these macaws, make themselves heard. At one point, we stopped at a tiny, tiny village. We got in a truck and we drove through some smaller rivers, through some rainforest, and then we hiked across a farmer's property. And on his property, he had the nest of this bird. This is one of the biggest eagles in the world. This is the harpy eagle. They are very rare. They hunt in the canopy. So they have these huge talons. The claws are as big as a grizzly bear's claws. And they're hunting for monkeys and sloths in the canopy of the rainforest. So very rare to see them, and very lucky because this nest had a chick on it. So this is probably the female waiting at the nest with the chick. And then the male was probably out hunting. And so they'll take turns doing that, going out to hunt and bring stuff back to the nest. So really cool to see a rare harpy eagle, and to see the harpy eagle with a nest and with its chick. When you're going along the river, you have to keep your eyes open the whole time because you never know what you're going to see. This is a capped heron. Here's a flock of wood stork on the side of the river. This is a rosette spoonbill. So its beak looks like a spoon. That's where it gets the name. It uses the beak to kind of filter what it likes to eat out of the water. And along the river, we find these Amazon turtles, these freshwater turtles. And usually when you find these turtles, they're usually covered in butterflies because the butterflies like to lick the salt from around their eyes and around their noses. So the tear ducts of the turtles produce salt, and the butterflies don't get a lot of salt. So they like to steal a little bit of salt from things like these turtles on the side of the river. It doesn't seem to bother the turtles. They just kind of sit there warming up in the sun. And then you can see the butterflies kind of gather around and take turns drinking a little bit of salt from the turtles. And we have capybaras. This is the largest rodent in the world. So we have rodents in Canada and the US, mice and rats and squirrels. But this is much, much larger, the capybara. They're aquatic, which means they like to be in the water. They eat on the side of the river. Sometimes they eat in the water. And they are a favorite food of the jaguar. And maybe, just maybe, I saw a jaguar. So let's watch a little bit longer into this presentation and see if I got lucky and spotted a jaguar. One morning we got up nice and early. So this is another time lapse. This is going along the river as the sun was rising. So we headed to a spot called, it's an Oxbow lake called Blanco. And an Oxbow lake forms when a bend in the river gets so wide, gets so pinched, that part of the river pinches right off and forms a little lake. So I've got another drone video here. This is sped up as well, but it shows you what an Oxbow lake looks like. This used to be a bend in the river, but it got so pinched off that it eventually got disconnected from the river, and it forms this beautiful lake. And this lake has otters and caiman, which are kind of like crocodiles. Lots of birds and fish and insects call this lake home. And years from now, it'll eventually be overgrown by plants. But for now, it's a beautiful ecosystem to explore just off the river. When we got to this spot, there was a little paddle boat that we kind of paddled along the river. And my guide told me that he could call a caiman. And I thought he was just being funny. I didn't think you could call a caiman. But he got to the dock and he started to call Ponchine, Ponchine over and over again. And sure enough, a caiman came swimming over to the dock. So I've got a little clip here. We're looking for Ponchine. There's my drone. And there we go. There's Ponchine coming over to the dock. This is a caiman. This wasn't too big, maybe 5 feet long. And this caiman pretty much followed us the whole time we were paddling on this Oxbow Lake until we got to the territory of the giant otters. Now, the caiman do not like giant otters because giant otters are big, they're tough, they have big, sharp teeth, and so caiman don't stand a chance against a group of river otters. The river otters are really playful. They swim around, they catch fish in their big webbed paws, and then they spin around with the fish and they eat them. They are very, very messy eaters. You can see these river otters here really enjoying some of the fish that they were swimming around and they were catching. And they're very, very messy eaters, but they are very, very good hunters. They're very good at catching fish. I said there were lots of birds around the Oxbow Lake, like this hoatzin. So this hoatzin is like a cow. Cows have 4 stomachs because it's hard to digest grass. Well, these birds eat leaves. So they have 4 stomachs so they can digest all of the leaves that they eat. And then they burp really smelly burps because, again, it's really hard to digest plants like leaves and grass. Amazon kingfishers here, like this guy, they hunt along the water for fish. This is a striated heron. You can see this one just caught a fish at the side. It was hunting on this log. And then there's bigger herons like this tiger heron. And this heron would eat fish and snakes and lizards and frogs, whatever it could find that was small enough to catch with its beak. So I have another little clip here just to show you where we stayed for the week. So this is called Manu Bird Lodge, and there was nobody there. It was just me and my guide. It's really just made of some wooden planks and some steel, some corrugated steel for the roof. And looking here with my drone, you can see it's just rainforest as far as you can see. Nothing but trees, no villages, no people, trees and river as far as you can see. It was absolutely amazing to be so far away from everybody. I didn't miss the internet. I didn't miss my phone. I did not miss hot water. It was great to be in a place that's so wild like this. So what else did we see? There's beautiful chestnut macaws like these two up at the top of this tree. Roadside hawks like this one. Now, obviously in the rainforest, there's no roads, but closer to cities, they like to hunt by the side of the road. That's why they get the name roadside hawk. There's lineated woodpeckers who have these great red afros. And if you're very observant, if you're quiet and you keep your eyes open, you can spot animals that camouflage. Animals like this green tree boa. Super rare to see because their camouflage is so good. But when you spot one, you can see just how beautiful of a snake they are. They are not venomous. They wrap up their prey. They squeeze them. They constrict them. And they slowly suffocate them. So that's how they do their hunting. And every night we were in the rainforest, we would go out till late in the night looking for nocturnal animals that come out at night, like this tropical screech owl, like this bullet ant. These ants have the most powerful sting, one of the most powerful bites of any insect. If this bullet ant bites you, it's about, I would say, almost as big as your pinky. You will be in pain for probably 24 hours, an entire day. You do not want to touch a bullet ant. There's tiny little frogs, but these frogs pack a punch. They are poisonous. They're toxic. If a predator eats one, it could kill them. So predators know to stay away from these little poison dart frogs. Other frogs use camouflage, like these couple species here that can blend in really well on leaves and other plants. And who are they hiding from? Well, they're hiding from snakes at night. This is a false viper. So vipers are found in the rainforest and they are very venomous, but this snake is not. It's harmless, but it looks a little bit like a viper. So it tricks predators into thinking it's a dangerous snake. And here's another boa. This is an Amazon boa, another beautiful snake we found. And this snake would have been in the swamp looking for tree frogs. It loves things like these tree frogs. You can see these beautiful tree frogs, beautiful eyes. There's frogs in the trees, there's frogs in the river, and there's frogs on the trails. This is a waxy monkey frog. Looks kind of sleepy there, sitting on a log on the trail. I spent 2 nights sleeping on a platform in the middle of the rainforest next to a pile of dirt. And you might wonder, why would you sleep in the rainforest next to a pile of dirt? And the reason is these big piles of dirt are called Claylicks, and they attract mammals like monkeys and tapirs who don't get enough minerals in their diet. They need minerals like salt. And if they come and eat a little bit of the dirt, it helps their health. And so for 2 nights, I slept on a platform. The first night, there was nothing. But on the second night, I got woken up by some grunting and mucking around in the dirt. And I had one chance to turn on a light and take a picture. And I spotted this tapir. So tapirs are the biggest mammals in the rainforest. They kind of have a snout like a small elephant's trunk. They eat plants. So they need to come to the Claylicks to eat some clay and get minerals like salt. And so this one here, you can see, is very dirty. It was digging in the Claylick. You can see its mouth was covered in clay because it was eating some of that clay. And this was probably a female tapir. My guide thought she was pregnant because she was quite round compared to maybe how you normally see a tapir. This is another kind of Claylick. This whole area here is a Claylick along the side of this river. And this is visited more by birds, parrots, macaws, parakeets, because they eat a lot of fruit. They don't get as much minerals. So they come to these Claylicks to do that, to find some minerals. Before the birds came, though, we were visited by this horned screecher. I had no idea that there were birds with horns, but there you go. You learn something new when you're exploring a new place. These are very loud birds, too. We had this beautiful roebuck deer come and visit the Claylick while we were waiting for the birds to come. And then they came. So first we had these parrots come. And you can see they're loud. They're crawling all over the Claylick. They're taking little bites of the soil so that they can get a little bit of extra minerals for their diet. And after them came the macaws. These are red and green macaws. So you can see that they came to take their turn on the Claylick. You can see some pictures of them flying in the air. Each one of these ones, if you look, they've got a mouthful of clay. They're getting some of those minerals. And then eventually they get bored and they move off to go find some other food. And it happened. What I wanted to happen more than anything in the rainforest was to see a jaguar. They're very rare. They're usually out at night. But we were coming around the corner in the canoe from the Claylick, and I saw something crawling out of the river. I yelled to my guide, "Satu, Satu, it's a jaguar." And it was. It had just crossed the river. It was all wet, and it heard the motor on the canoe, and it ran into the bushes. So I didn't get any pictures. So we pulled the canoe over onto the side of the river, and we sat and we waited quietly for about 20 minutes, and we waited, and we waited. And sure enough, it came back out because it was all wet and it wanted to dry off in the sun. So we had another couple minutes where it walked along the side of the river for a couple minutes, and then it disappeared back into the rainforest. So I hopped out quickly so I could get a couple pictures of the paw prints that it left in the fresh mud on the river. So lastly, the monkeys, right? Jungles, rainforest have monkeys. There's 15 monkey species in Manu National Park, and I was lucky enough to see 5 of them. We already saw the woolly monkey. I also saw white-fronted capuchins, but they were too high up to get a picture. But I did get some pictures of the red howler monkeys, and they're super loud. Every morning at 5 in the morning, they call and howl and scream at each other. So it's kind of like being in Jurassic Park. Every morning at 5 in the morning, you hear these crazy loud monkeys. These are saddleback tamarins. They're pretty fast. They jump in between the trees. So they're pretty cool. And the last ones I got pictures of were these titi monkeys. and they are very curious monkeys. If you are hiking and they spot you, they'll come for a closer look because they want to know what you are, what your deal is. And so here's another pair who stopped. This is the mother and the baby clinging on tightly to its mom's back. So there we go. That's kind of a whirlwind biodiversity tour of the Peruvian Amazon rainforest. We're going to switch gears and we're going to do some Q&A in a minute. But before that, I have a Kahoot quiz ready to go. So let's do a Kahoot quiz together. Let me switch my screen over and I will share a different screen for you. If you're tuning in via YouTube, now is a great time to start putting questions into the chat. Visit Camera Classrooms at the end of this Kahoot as well. So let me share my screen and let's get everybody loaded up for a little Kahoot. You need to visit kahoot.it, and then it's going to ask you for a PIN number. So you want to put in 8573435. That should be up there on your screen. If you have a laptop, a Chromebook, or a tablet at your desk, you can use that. If not, your teacher could pop this up at the front of the classroom. You could shout out your answers to him or her. Or if you can't connect anything, then just go through and answer the questions for yourself and see how you do. So we'll give it a few moments here to get a few more groups into the chat. We'll be doing some questions soon. I do see a question in the chat already about tigers in the Amazon. And the answer is no, it's the wrong part of the world. South America, the biggest cat is the jaguar. There's pumas as well. So we call them mountain lions or cougars here in North America. And then there's smaller species of cats like ocelots and a couple other really small species of cats. But the jaguar and the pumas are the biggest ones. Tigers are found more like Asia is where you'd find our tigers. All right, we still have groups joining, so we'll give it another maybe minute to see if we can get a few more groups in here. We will have lots of questions. That'll be good. So get your questions ready. I'll come visit your classrooms. And then I've got my camera stuff here so I can show you some of the camera gear that I was using while I was in the rainforest to take some of those pictures, to take some of those videos. Okay, I think things are starting to slow down. So I think we are ready to get our Kahoot started. There are 4 questions. There's true and false. There's multiple choice. The quicker you put the right answer in, the more points you're going to get. So let's get this Kahoot started because I want to get some questions next. All right, first question coming up. True or false? Madre de Dios translates to Mother of God. So the river I was on was called the Madre de Dios. Does it translate from Spanish to Mother of God? We've got a few more seconds to get that answer in. Is that true or is that false? All right, it is true. It makes its way through the rainforest into Bolivia and eventually joins the Amazon River. That puts the diligent falcon in the lead. Let's go to a multiple choice question. Mammals and birds visit Claylicks for, are they visiting for protein, minerals, vitamins, or carbohydrates? Why do the birds and the mammals visit Claylicks in the rainforest? Are they looking for protein, minerals, vitamins, or carbohydrates? Whew, that was fast. Good job, crew. You guys beat the timer. It is minerals, especially minerals like salt. When you eat plants, when you eat fruit and nuts, sometimes you don't get everything you need. And by eating these little bits of clay, they can get some of the minerals that they missed out on. The healthful puffin has taken first place. Let's go to another multiple choice. What is Peru's national bird? Is it the Amazon kingfisher, the mountain toucan, the scarlet macaw, or the cock of the rock? So we have 4 options here. All 4 are found in the rainforest in Peru. Is it the Amazon kingfisher, the mountain toucan, the scarlet macaw, or the cock of the rock? 1 more seconds. All right, it is the cock of the rock. Very distinctive bird. They can be found in other countries, but Peru picked them for their national bird. So the knowing kitten takes first place. We've got one more question. Capybara are the world's smallest rodents. Is that true or is that false? Capybara are the world's smallest rodents. True or false? All right. That is absolutely false. Capybara are the largest rodents in the world. Yeah, you can find them on the river. They are prey for jaguar, and they're very aquatic. They are very good swimmers. So dynamic dragon in third, knowing kitten in second, and the mighty orcs in first place. All right. Good job, crew. Thanks for playing along. I am going to stop this screen share. If you are tuning in via YouTube, use the chat sidebar and slam some questions in there for us. I will work them in. But for now, let's meet some classrooms and let's grab a couple questions. So let's go to Westview School. We've got some third graders hanging out with us. How are we doing, third graders?
Are there any languages that died out in Peru?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, there's before, let's say, people started exploring the rainforest more, there were uncontacted tribes. So tribes that were completely separate from, I guess, modern people. And over time, though, they became more integrated. They started to speak English, and many of them forgot their languages. There are still a couple tribes that are semi-uncontacted. That means people like farmers and villagers don't really interact with them. So they still use their own languages. And I have a friend who's a linguist, and she works in Peru, and she records languages because just like animals and plants can be endangered, languages can be endangered and become extinct as well. Good question. All right, we have another one on deck.
Oliver, what was your question? Just say from there, what is it? How many types of plants are there?
Oh man, that is a hard question to answer for two reasons. One, there's thousands of them. So that's one thing. There's thousands of plant species. And then we don't actually know because we haven't found them all. So best estimate is that Peru has about 25,000 different plant species. And that's 10% of all the plants in the world. But I bet you the number is way higher because there's parts of the rainforest that we haven't explored before. We haven't looked at the plants. So I bet you there's way more plants waiting to be discovered in rainforests all over the world, not just Peru. All right, I'm going to try and come back your way, third graders, but I want to go to some fifth graders who I think are in California. Hey, fifth graders, how we doing?
Oh. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I was wondering, are there any canines in the Amazon rainforest?
That's a really good question. In this part of the Amazon, I don't think there are. I think the only ones that you would come across would be ones like people's pets. So occasionally you see a village, a small village, maybe some indigenous people in those villages, and they might have dogs. But during the time I was there, we didn't come across any wild canines.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
How come during the Kahoots with the question that said true or false? Oh. Okay, then I'm out here.
So like, which would come out on top, a jaguar or one of the otters in the river?
Oh, well, I think it would be the jaguar because the otters don't move quite as well if they were on land. And jaguars are strong. They're really bulky. They're really strong. And they have one of the strongest bites of any animal. So some jaguars, like in Brazil, they hunt caiman. They jump on caiman in the water and they bite them at the back of their neck and drag the whole caiman out of the water. So jaguar are really, really strong. If the jaguar was swimming in the river, well, then I think the otter would kick its butt because the jaguar is not as strong as in the river.
Okay, thanks.
All right. All right, we'll grab one more.
So for the birds, the two toucan, the fake toucan and the real toucan or something.
Yeah, the toucanet and the toucan.
Yeah, what is the difference between the two?
It's really a size thing. Toucanets are much smaller, where toucans are much bigger birds. And then they probably have small little differences, like with what they hunt and what they eat, because toucans are bigger, so they can eat bigger things. But really the size is kind of the biggest difference.
So it's basically the toucanet is a really small toucan.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I will try to come back your way, fifth graders. Mr. Stevenson's crew, 4-5. How are we doing today? There you are.
What type of amphibians live in the Amazon?
Was that amphibians?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
man. Too many to even try to talk about right now. The Amazon, the rainforest, is a perfect ecosystem for amphibians because it's wet, it's warm, and amphibians love that. So in Peru, there's over 600 amphibian species. Most of them are frogs. So there's toads, there's frogs, there's tree frogs, there's frogs in the rivers, there's frogs in the grass, about 600 different species of amphibians that live in the rainforest, in Peru specifically.
Oh, what's the most poisonous animal there? Like, is there any poisonous animals there?
Yeah, there's lots of animals that have venom. So things like vipers, that's how they hunt. They bite their prey and they inject venom. They can also use that for defense if something attacks them. And then things like the frogs, they can have toxins in their bodies. Some frogs, some insects can have toxins in their bodies so that if something eats them, they feel sick or they could even die. So there's quite a few things in the rainforest, insects and amphibians that can have, and snakes that can have some venom, some toxins.
Is there any endangered animals there?
Yeah, there's a lot. In places like, well, all throughout the Amazon, the rainforest is being deforested. So it's being cut down, it's being burnt down for cow fields and things like that. So there are lots of plants and trees and different species that are becoming endangered because they're losing their habitats. So there's lots of examples. Luckily, in Manu National Park, it's really well protected. And in fact, there's the national park. Then there's a big zone that wraps around the park called a buffer zone. And they don't even really let people do much in that area. So they're trying really hard to keep that spot protected. All right, Mrs. Fisher's crew, let's bring you in here.
We've got Waylon with a question.
All right.
the tapir's ears?
Where are its ears? They are there. They do have ears. Let me see. Did I close my presentation? I didn't. Okay, let me zip to the tapir picture. Oh, yeah, here. Let me share my screen again really quickly. I'll show you the tapir's ears to prove that they do have those ears. There we go. There we go. You can see the two ears kind of sticking up here. I know it's a little hard to see because it was dark, and I really only had one chance to take a picture. The tapir, once we turned on the spotlight, the tapir ran back into the bushes. Okay, who's got another question?
All right, Summer has a question.
What did you eat?
What did we eat? That's a great question. We ate what we brought with us. So we brought, there was no electricity, but we could still cook because we had a little propane stove. So like a little propane burner. So we could warm up water. We could cook really simple things like chicken or fish. We brought a lot of fruit and vegetables with us. So basically chicken, fish, rice, fruits and vegetables, really whatever we could bring with us when we went into the rainforest.
We have another Waylon with a different question.
All right.
So why do the snakes eat the frogs at night? Like, why don't they why don't they eat them in daytime?
Yeah, well, the frogs tend to come out at night because the temperature is cooler. During the day, it's really hot, and their skin would dry out if they were in the direct sunlight. So they're more nocturnal. They come out in the evening. And then so the snakes come out as well at that time because that's their prey. So they need to come out when the frogs and other things are out that they like to eat. So the frogs don't like it too hot during the day. It can dry them out. So they come out a lot more at night. And then, of course, the snakes will come out because they want to eat some of those frogs. All right, Farmington, we got our summer school crew.
Hello. This
Hi.
is Courtney.
My question is, why was Machu Picchu so built up? Like, why was it so high? And how did they get, like, stuff up there?
Yeah, those are great questions. So it's Machu Picchu is a ceremonial site. It was a real special site for the Inca. When you see some of the temples they have there, they really studied the sun and how it moved. And so at certain times of the year, the sun would shine through certain windows in the temples. It was pretty cool how they understood the movements of things like the sun and the moon. And so, yeah, with the Andes Mountains, they run all the way along Peru. And so when that's where kind of your home is, that's kind of where you live. That's where you build your structures and your temples. That's where you do your agriculture. And where did the stone come from? Well, actually, they didn't have to go very far. Right at Machu Picchu, they showed us a site they called the quarry. And so they could take rocks right from the hillside, and they could use those, shape them, form them, and they could use those to build the terraces and the temples and the other buildings. So they could have quarries where they could take the rock right from the mountain, right close by. All right.
Okay, we have Gabe and Colton. They kind of have a two-part question here. Gabe?
Perfect.
How long did you stay in total in South America?
Dan?
Did you learn something new?
All right. So it's actually 17 days this time that I was in South America. I spent about a week in Peru, in the Amazon. And then I went back to Lima and jumped on a tall ship, the Darwin 200 expedition. And I sailed from Peru to Ecuador. And so that took about 8 or so days. So in total, it's about 17 days in South America. And every time I go to a place like that, I absolutely learn something new. And my favorite thing is to be with guides who live in the country because they grew up there. They know the land better than anybody else. So they can share stories. They can talk about the wildlife because they've lived with it. They've been a part of it. And I think what was really cool, those birds that I showed you, the Hoatzin, they have those 4 stomachs so they can digest leaves and grass and things. But then when they're babies, they actually have claws on their wings so that if they fall out of the nest, they can still climb back up the tree and get back into their nest. And that means that they're a primitive bird, because some of you may know that birds are related to dinosaurs. And that little feature, that leftover claw feature, is a really primitive thing for birds to still have a little claw. It would have been a little more similar to some of their ancestors that they had with dinosaurs a long, long time ago. So it's kind of cool to see a bird that's still kind of a little more closely related to dinosaurs.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Well, I am going to do 2 things right now. I'm going to take us offline, but I'm also going to stick around with the camera classrooms. If you guys do have a few more questions, I'll answer some of those questions. But for the moment, I'm going to take our stream offline. If anybody has to leave for recess or anything like that, feel free to go. But to our camera classrooms, if you want to stick around for a couple minutes, I'll happily answer a few more questions. But thank you to everybody who tuned in today. I hope you learned a little bit about the Peruvian rainforest and the amazing biodiversity that it contains. And then we hope to see you next week. We've got a ton of environment events, a ton of World Ocean Week events. So I hope you dive in with us and we see you before the school year ends. So thanks. We're going to sign off for today.